In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro delves into the tragic mid-air collision that occurred near Reagan National Airport, involving an American Airlines flight and a Blackhawk helicopter. The incident resulted in the loss of 67 lives, raising numerous questions about air traffic control, pilot error, and the operational protocols of military aircraft in civilian airspace. Shapiro discusses the implications of the crash, particularly focusing on the role of diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) policies within the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) and the military. The American Airlines flight, a Bombardier CRJ-700, was struck by a Blackhawk helicopter during its approach to the airport. The helicopter was reportedly conducting a training flight at an altitude exceeding the maximum limit of 200 feet. Shapiro highlights the size of Blackhawk helicopters, emphasizing that they are not small aircraft and pose significant risks when operating in proximity to commercial flights. The 3 military personnel aboard the helicopter were using night vision goggles, which may have impaired their situational awareness. Shapiro notes that air traffic control was aware of the proximity of both aircraft, as recordings revealed controllers instructing the helicopter to pass behind the regional jet. This raises questions about the effectiveness of communication between military and civilian air traffic control as they operate on different radio frequencies. The podcast discusses the unique challenges of landing at Reagan National Airport, which requires navigating a narrow flight path to avoid restricted airspace around the White House and Pentagon. As investigations into the crash continue, Shapiro emphasizes the need to determine whether the incident was a result of air traffic control failures or pilot error. He references past near misses at the airport, suggesting that such incidents are more common than one might expect. The recovery of the black boxes from both aircraft is anticipated to provide further insights into the events leading up to the collision. Shapiro also discusses the qualifications of the helicopter pilots, noting that the instructor pilot had significant flight experience, while the co-pilot's experience was considered average. This raises concerns about the training and operational protocols in place for military pilots, particularly in civilian airspace. A significant portion of the podcast is dedicated to the discussion of DEI policies and their potential impact on aviation safety. Shapiro argues that the FAA has prioritized DEI initiatives over safety measures, which may have contributed to staffing shortages and operational inefficiencies. He cites a report indicating that the air traffic controller responsible for monitoring the airspace during the crash was performing the duties of 2 people, suggesting that understaffing may have played a role in the incident. Shapiro points out that the Biden administration's focus on DEI has led to concerns about the qualifications of personnel within the FAA. He references a letter from Republican attorneys general questioning the agency's hiring practices and priorities, arguing that the emphasis on diversity has come at the expense of aviation safety. The podcast features comments from President Trump, who criticized the FAA's DEI policies and suggested that they may have contributed to the crash. The podcast also touches on the political fallout from the crash, with Shapiro discussing the reactions from various political figures. He highlights the backlash against Trump for suggesting a connection between DEI policies and the incident, noting that Democrats have criticized him for speculating on the causes of the crash before all the facts are known. Shapiro argues that the criticism of Trump is more about defending DEI policies than addressing the safety concerns raised by the crash. Shapiro contrasts the current political climate with past instances where Democrats have rushed to conclusions about issues like gun control following tragedies. He suggests that the response to the D.C. crash reflects a broader trend of politicizing tragedies for ideological purposes. The podcast shifts focus to recent Senate hearings involving Trump nominees, including RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Cash Patel. Shapiro discusses the contentious nature of these hearings, particularly highlighting RFK Jr.'s responses to questions about vaccines and conspiracy theories. He notes that while RFK Jr. performed admirably, his past statements on vaccines may pose challenges for his confirmation. Shapiro also emphasizes Cash Patel's strong performance during his hearing, where he addressed concerns about government overreach and the weaponization of the FBI. Patel's commitment to due process and accountability resonated with many senators, despite the controversy surrounding his nomination. Tulsi Gabbard's hearing is also discussed, particularly her responses to questions about Edward Snowden. Shapiro points out that Gabbard's reluctance to label Snowden a traitor may hinder her confirmation, despite her strong military background and commitment to national security.